Welcome back to the After Hours podcast. I'm your host, Francisco Delator. Co-host today, I have Joseph Prohaska, and we're joined with the gentleman from the Apothecary at Brents Drugs. What's going on, Jonathan and Brad?
Hey, what's going on?
Just enjoying the weather cooling down a little bit. How's it in Mississippi?
The weather's fantastic here.
Yeah, it's been pretty fantastic the last week. We've been like sunny and 75, which is pretty magical.
That's perfect weather for me, honestly.
Agreed.
Well, it's a pretty unique name, the Apothecary at Brents Drugs. At first glance, you wouldn't really think, that's a bar, restaurant, diner, but let's get into the backstory here. How did you come up with the name?
The interesting thing, I guess, to know anything about the Apothecary, you got to know a little bit about Brents Drugs. Brents is a 1946 pharmacy, one of the early pharmacies in Jackson. There was a pharmacist that worked downtown, and at the time when suburbs were starting to pop up in the country, people were leaving the downtown central business district. He had the vision, a guy named Alvin Brent, to go ahead and open up a pharmacy kind of on the edge of town. And so the shopping center that we're in, if you want to call it a shopping center, it's the first shopping center in the state. Multi-unit, and that opened in 1946 as a pharmacy. It had a soda fountain inside of it, and so that's where the name Brents Drugs come from. Dr. Brent, opened up the pharmacy. Brents sold the pharmacy out about 11 years ago, and just became the soda fountain diner, and that's when we kind of got involved and took it over, just serving the diner, food and milkshakes, things like that you've always had at the soda fountain. And that was the challenge, is are people willing to come in? And, the original idea was people would come in and eat while they're waiting on their, items they needed from the pharmacy, or could buy, your typical things that you would buy, at a pharmacy drugstore. And so now we're a full-time restaurant. And with that, there was a drugstore room in the back. It actually didn't have air conditioning or anything like that, or heat. But it literally was built onto the back of the building in the 40s to store drugs, and it was floor-to-ceiling shelves. And when Jonathan and I looked at it, it was one of the most intriguing pieces of, as a neat business that had been around 70 years to maintain the soda fountain, diner. But it was also, what can we do with this, back drug storeroom? And so, it was years in the making. I mean, it was close to 4 years from the time that we began opening the restaurant, Brents, up front, before we had the Apothecary open. But I think that name, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, I think in the first few months, we kind of had the idea and the name, okay, if we were going to do something back here, it needed to play off of the drugstore or pharmacy up front. And we just, tossed around some other ideas, and we felt like that kind of accomplished everything. It could be the Apothecary, but it was at Brents Drugs. Brents is one of those, Jackson destination, restaurants that most people know where it is. I'd never thought about it until a few businesses opened up in the area, and one of their advertising taglines was, right near Brents Drugs. And so when people start saying, hey, we're near Brents Drugs, I realize, hey, people know where that is. And so it allowed us to identify, we don't have a sign out front. So we're, you walk through Brents to get to Apothecary. So we didn't need people to know, how to get there. So, that's kind of the history, I guess, let me say, of Brents, and how we came up with the name.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty great, pretty historic, and very unique to anything that we've heard on this podcast. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, Brad and I, we talked through several ideas about, initially opening a bar in Jackson. And I lived in Texas for a while, and just in traveling a lot with work, experienced a lot of really great cocktail bars, specifically some in Chicago and New Orleans. And so when we started talking about doing a bar, and then started diving into not only the pharmacy soda fountain history, which is so rich, but also Prohibition and pre-Prohibition in Mississippi. We both just collectively said, we've got to open a cocktail bar. Also, at that time, which was 7.5 years ago, there was no place to get a proper cocktail in Jackson, in our opinion. So we were, our goal was to be the first cocktail bar in Jackson, and, building our whole program around the history of the soda fountain. So, we incorporated soda fountain taps into our bar program. We have original pharmacy cabinets. We kept a lot of the original pharmacy shelving. We try to keep it as true to the space as possible. Yeah.
Right. And it sounds like, Jackson's a perfect home for your vision and what you're doing at Brents Drugs. Are you guys both longtime residents there?
Yeah, we both grew up here. We went to high school together, went to college together. We've been friends for a long time. And then we both moved away, parts of our early adult life and came back and, decided that we're going to be in Jackson. And we saw a lot of movement of other people starting to open places and get Jackson on the map. We really have a great food and beverage aspect of our city that's growing very, very well. And so we're glad to be a part of that.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like you guys are part of that revival movement, or the expansion into fine dining, fine craft. With that being said, do you think that the South in general is kind of overlooked for the food and beverage industry?
Absolutely. So we were honored that we were just featured in Esquire's Best Bars in America for this year, which is an interesting time to put out an article in the midst of quarantine, part of that, and just all the COVID-19 restrictions, but incredibly honored by that. But the writer that pitched us for that, she specifically told her boss, she said, "I'm tired of writing about bars, the best bars being in Brooklyn or Chicago or San Francisco or whatever." So I do think that even in the past 10 years or less, you've seen some incredible bars open up, not just cocktail bars, but bars in general all across the South. And the South is, we're having our time now, and it's only going to get better.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had the pleasure of talking with a couple of bars in the South, one in Florida, one in Atlanta, Georgia, and one in Alabama, actually. And all of those, they were great, and I can't wait to go visit. But like you touched on, I feel like all of the bars that are mentioned that get a lot of praise are, on the West Coast in California or in New York. And even here in Toledo, Ohio, where Joey and I are residents, there's a bunch of great bars here that get little to no recognition on a national scale. So I'm glad that I'm glad now the media is finally expanding their horizons.
For sure.
So going back to a little bit about your guys' bar, what's your favorite part about owning and operating a bar?
One of the things I think, it's a bar and a lot of restaurants too, but that community feel. I think one of the things that Jonathan and I, from the very beginning, as we were kind of had this vision and idea, we wanted to be a vital part, of the community. And that was both, Jackson, but also the Fondren neighborhood where we're in. We've been lucky that there's been a revitalization in that area. So there are a number of restaurants that there were a handful there, but you've had a number of new ones recently. So, again, just having regulars that come, that would live in the neighborhood or spend time there, work in that, in the area and frequent the bar. We just enjoy being part of that, being a part of the community, do what we can to help out. Whenever somebody in the community says, "Hey, can y'all help out with this?" I know that's something I enjoy being a part of, and just the family atmosphere we have with our employees and with our staff.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate to, over the last 7.5 years, to have really incredible staff, and they've always referred to themselves as a family. They're all hanging out when they're not working. We've definitely been blessed to have some amazing folks. But also it's just been really cool to get to know our regulars. Regulars are really the backbone of any great bar or coffee shop or restaurant, and you depend on those regulars. But we even though Jackson's in a large city, we are the capital city of Mississippi. So we get a lot of people that come in from other cities for work. And I mean, we have what I would call semi-regulars that live in Atlanta or Austin or Dallas or wherever. And every time they come to Jackson, they come to Apothecary. And it's incredible to hear from them and say how much they love our bar. So that brings a lot of satisfaction to us, because ultimately we're trying to create a third place for people to come and have it as their home away from work at home. Brad and I talk about this a lot, but one thing that we really, really did not want was to create any sort of pretentious atmosphere. We didn't want it to be a snooty cocktail bar, and you never know who your guests are going to end up being until you get open, right? And we have just been floored with the diversity of our guests. We have guests that are out of college, and we have guests that come that are 80, and it's always fun. We kind of laugh, like if we show up on a Friday night and the place is packed, and we look around and we don't know anybody there. It's not just our friends come to hang out. It's a little bit of everybody, and that really is rewarding.
Absolutely. And you touched on it, that having, regulars that you can rely on, but then also being able to expand into new demographics. That is pretty much key from what we've heard from everybody, especially in troubling times like COVID and honestly just the year 2020 in general. Just having the regulars and having support from the community is really great. And with that being said, I mean, obviously you guys are a staple in Jackson. Do you guys think that another apothecary could pop up somewhere else and be as successful, or do you think it needs to be a Mississippi thing?
It's a good question. We were talking about that earlier. I think the thing that makes any establishment, any brand great is its authenticity. And, having a soda fountain inspired classic cocktail bar that's located in the back of a pharmacy soda fountain, you can't just recreate that in a, suburban strip mall, right? And so, in thinking through a lot of our favorite places that we've been to, it's all about their authenticity. And so could it be done? Absolutely. I mean, if there was a great, some great Art Deco pharmacy in Wicker Park in Chicago that happened to have a back room, well, that could be a great situation.
Well said. So 11 years ago is when you guys first took over, right?
Yeah, so that was when we took over the restaurant side. So the diner side, it actually, it went up for sale. But the idea was, hey, the pharmacy's leaving. If anyone, it was in the newspaper, in the state newspaper, the Clarion Ledger, just saying, if anybody wants to buy Brent's Drugs, it's for sale. It's been around. And actually, I think the headline said it was likely to close. And Jonathan and I were both single at the time, and went to lunch and just talked about it. And, what would that look like? We both have full-time jobs, outside of Brent's, and kind of just started thinking, would that even be possible? Is that realistic? I live in the neighborhood. I live in the Fondren neighborhood. So I actually spent, a few weeks making some phone calls, asking people if anyone was interested. And of course, everyone's response is, we don't want to see Brent's Drugs close. You should take it on. No one else wanted to take it on, but they definitely didn't want to see it close. So one of the unique aspects about this project and about Brent's and Apothecary is that people were familiar, with the business, and a lot of people have grown up, either going as kids or taking their kids or grandkids, to the soda fountain. So you had a lot of community buy-in from day one that people wanted to see this business make it and survive. So it was neat that, 11 years ago when we started actually just by putting some flyers on the table initially and just saying, hey, effective, July 1, we've taken ownership. Please let us know, what we can do. We really don't want to change things, but you'll maybe seeing some few changes minor changes, in the coming weeks. And we tried to, improve service and just upgrade some things, because initially the business concept had been a pharmacy that just happened to have a soda fountain diner inside of it. And so all of a sudden the concept changed completely, that we were strictly a restaurant. And so, that did need to change some things, what a general manager did on a day-to-day basis. And, one of the pharmacy area, was now going to be empty. And what did that look like? And, it just presented its own challenges. And we just kind of had to take that and run with it, and almost take it, day to day and week to week, just trying to keep the doors open. But as we did that and kind of progressed through the restaurant and started trying to figure that out, provided a few different offerings on the menu, the entire time Jonathan and I were talking about, okay, this backspace, what are we going to do with the former drugstore room? And we're brainstorming, and it literally took, 2 or 3 years from vision and starting even renderings of what that would look like to completion.
And kind of touching on the community feel in Jackson, are you guys close with a lot of the other bar and restaurant owners in the area?
Yeah, for sure. We have a really pretty tight-knit community. So Brad's actually an attorney. His day job is an attorney, and I'm my day job, and a lot of times other job, is I'm a graphic designer, and I do a lot of branding for restaurants and bars. So I've gotten to know over the years, it's been an interesting perspective, because I've gotten to know a lot of these chefs and bartenders just because they're coming to Apothecary, but also because they've been opening their own restaurants. And so over the past 7 years, what we've done is we've done a series of pop-ups for our chef friends around town that were planning their future restaurant. And so just to help support them along the way. So yeah, it's been super fun to get to know the hospitality community that's around us.
That's very cool. And you touched on it. You guys have, different day jobs, and I would say, pretty opposite sides of the spectrum there. What do you think makes each other a really great business partner?
Well, I'm glad that Brad's an attorney. That helps a lot. And, he's able to see things that I don't see, and tackle things that I have no idea what to do. And, I might be redesigning the fall menu at midnight. So we definitely have different gifts and weaknesses, and I think they work really well together.
Yeah, and I think we definitely come things from a different perspective, and I think it works well that a lot of times the law might be more, black and white, or determining, thinking of things, it might be a little more rigid, and whereas Jonathan kind of comes from more of a creative approach. And so I think there's certainly times we may think, hey, I like this approach better, but I think it also gives us two perspectives on a lot of the issues we may deal with, both from a creative perspective, and then also, okay, we've got to comply with these rules or do that type of thing. So, sometimes, as the lawyer, I don't like to know what the answer is. I'd rather not. I wish I didn't know we can't do this. But sometimes too, it allows us to have some different insight. I actually do, work with a number of small businesses, and also, restaurant hospitality things. So I end up doing some liquor related laws that, can be good and sometimes bad too. Now that we actually have, Go Cup. So it allows us to serve cocktails and people can leave the establishment. That's finally been adopted in our area, and something that, presents an opportunity going forward.
Well said. Yeah, you touched on it there with the to-go cups. Have there been any other regulations in place, or anything that's been amended for the laws around liquor in Mississippi?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with one that's actually not liquor related, and then we'll get to that. But one of the challenges, just like any small business, you're certainly going to you have your business plan, you're ready to move forward, and you're like, I know what I'm going to do. This is going to go easy. And one of the surprises that came out of nowhere was after we bought Brents Drugs, is somebody came to me, I believe it was a pharmacist, and said, hey, I just want to let you know the State Board of Pharmacy is likely going to shut you down because you're using the name Brents Drugs and you don't actually sell any pharmaceutical products. And so, as an attorney, I said, well, let me check into that. So did some digging, and he was correct in the sense that there was actually a state statute that says you couldn't use the name pharmacy, drugstore, or even the word apothecary without being registered with the Mississippi State Board of Pharmacy. So one of the things that we did, and it was kind of fun looking back, we actually had to take some legislators to dinner, actually buy them some drinks, and through some lobbying efforts, we were able to amend that law, and actually says, unless you previously had been registered with the State Board of Pharmacy for more than 30 years. So that allowed us two things. It allowed us to keep the name Brents Drugs, and allowed us, it was before Apothecary had opened, but we were actually able to use the name Apothecary, which we would not have ever otherwise been able to do. So that's, one of those regulatory things that I certainly see their purpose in adopting it, but early on, we kind of had to jump through some hoops to get that done. As far as liquor-specific laws, we've had some challenges, especially with COVID. I mean, right now we're still, liquor sales end at 11 p.m. So, we've had to work, inside those constraints. But the good news is, hopefully looking on the horizon when COVID's behind us, we mentioned Go Cup, so we'll be allowed to, serve cocktails. We actually installed a takeout window. One of the, challenges presented during COVID was that, we went from probably, 80 to 90% dine-in orders to now at one point, we were at, probably 60, 70% takeout. And so in assessing that, and again, on a daily and weekly basis, we had talked about the opportunity of a takeout window, but we wanted to make sure it was done correctly, being that we're in a 1946 business and in a historic district. So, we found a window that we could use, as a takeout window that fit where we were and looked, original to the building. And so we did have that installed during this time. And as far as from the bar perspective, it will allow us to not only serve takeout food during the day, but at night we could serve cocktails to people. We're in a kind of walkable historic district. So if people want to walk up, and grab a drink to stroll the neighborhood, or, maybe they've already gone out to eat and just want to get a nightcap, they can come by our takeout window and have the opportunity to sell there. So hopefully an opportunity to, increase sales, or at least change the dynamic, of a cocktail bar.
That all sounds so awesome, Brad and John. The lobbying efforts is super unique. We haven't heard anything like that yet, to actually, play a part in changing the state legislation to kind of keep the name. It's super unique.
Yeah, we were actually, it's been years now, but right after we opened, I was at a bar in New York and kind of telling the story of our cocktail bar, and I told them the name, and they were completely floored that we had that name. And they said, how did you get that name? And apparently they wanted to have the same name, and they couldn't get past the law in New York, and they had to change their name. And I said, oh, well, we just had a lobbyist.
That's awesome. And touching on the second part of the conversation, you were talking a little bit about your menu. What type of foods you guys serve at the Apothecary at Brents Drugs?
Yeah, so that's one interesting thing that we've tried a number of things over the last 7 years. We originally opened up and had just a really small menu of kind of playing off of the diner aspect. Brents Drugs is known for its Brents burger, their house-cut French fries, and their milkshakes. And so we opened up and we did just some sliders and some really good fries, fried oyster sliders, things like that. And we had a really good following of people that wanted that food, but it wasn't enough. And so we tried some other things. We even tried elevating it a little bit. And it's one of the lessons that we learned. At the end of the day, the majority of the people that are coming to the bar want burgers, fries, hot dogs, just good bar food. And so I'm really happy with our menu right now. I mean, we're serving our classic Brents burger. We're doing the house cut fries. We have a play off of a hot dog that's a banh mi hot dog that's been selling really well. So yeah, it's just a really small limited menu. Grilled cheese. One of our favorites is a grilled pimento cheese with bacon. It's on Texas toast. I'd actually really want that right now. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's, we've kind of learned from that, and I think we'll continue doing that. And, you know, on like things like New Year's Eve or, you know, we're still doing pop-ups here and there, but we'll have one of our chef buddies come in and do something, you know, crazy. So
you were describing the food and the grilled cheese and the milkshake. Joey and I just like looked at each other, so hungry. That all just sounds so good.
Oh yeah. When we come down, we'll definitely have to try the Brents burger.
Yes, sir.
That's a good one.
So you touch on the food. What would you say is the most popular drink?
Well, if you look at sales alone, our number one classic cocktail is for sure the old fashioned. And, you know, the old fashioned is, as you know, is made very differently depending on where you go.
Absolutely.
The core of our beverage program is built on classic cocktails and really the authenticity as far as we could reach to create those recipes correctly from the beginning. And we worked at the very beginning when we were building our bar program. We partnered up with our friends in New Orleans, Neil and Kirk, that own Cure and Cane and Table, and they helped us develop the bar program. And so we were very fortunate to work with them and become friends, and to this day are good mentors of ours. But yeah, answer your question, old fashioned is the number one for sure. And you know, we have a few popular drinks that have stood the test of time since we opened. We have one called the Doc Noble. It is a old-fashioned variation that is named after the pharmacist. His name was Doc Noble during Prohibition, right, Brad? He was there during Prohibition?
Yeah, so Mississippi was the last state to come out of Prohibition, interestingly enough, in 1966, believe it or not. So Brents opened in 1946. So the first 20 years Brents Drugs was open, Mississippi was still in Prohibition. And yeah, Doc Noble was there, and apparently it was known he liked to self-prescribe, you know, some beverages on the clock. So we figured we needed to honor him since that was a local lore around Doc Noble.
So yeah, it's an old-fashioned variation that we use rye whiskey, and we infuse it with Mississippi pecans and a little bit of cayenne pepper. And so that, when you use the Demerara sugar, is this really nice balance of sweet and some spice. But people, if you like spice, people love it.
Yeah, that's the first thing I'm getting when we come down.
Sounds amazing.
That sounds so good. One thing that we did not touch on, though, was the Twisted Mimosa, which has gotten some press, and I'm just interested to hear the backstory on that.
Garden Gun magazine reached out and asked about doing a cocktail and featuring a cocktail. And so one of our bartenders at the time, Robert Arender, a really great bartender, I really need to give credit to him for really creating this recipe that was inspired by a story of me as a kid. We knew we wanted to feature a cathead product. Cathead is a distillery in Jackson, Mississippi, and they make fantastic products, and they're good friends of ours. And so they had pretty recently put out a Cathead honeysuckle vodka. Honeysuckle, I don't know if that grows in Ohio, but it's a very floral and delicious vine that grows in the South. And my grandparents had just a bunch of it on the side of their house when I would go visit them in Columbus, Mississippi. And so kind of took inspiration from that. I wanted to do a really light, refreshing, summery drink. And so it's got fresh grapefruit. It's got Cathead, honeysuckle vodka, and champagne, and a little bit of Aperol, which adds a nice little bitter, sweet orange to it. It's fantastic.
Sounds delightful. And you mentioned that you're friends with some of the local distilleries and other food and beverage establishments in the area. I mean, from my experience, you really can't beat, local breweries, local distilleries, any of the sort. It's just one of a kind. And I think that's also what probably makes most of your menu special.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was just going to mention, actually how I first found you guys was through the Esquire post and some of the other featured articles around bars in the South specifically. And we touched on how it's somewhat overlooked right now, but do you think in the future that like the South is going to be like the place to be?
I don't know if it's going to be the place to be, but I do think I don't want to undersell the South either. I love the South, and there's so much complexity and beauty that I do think is overlooked, and a lot of times, people who aren't from the South may just have a preconceived notion of what it is, right? But as I mentioned earlier, just things are changing, and you're seeing. We're seeing Jackson. Brad and I couldn't be happier with where Jackson is going, because it just kind of felt like our city was just kind of asleep for a long time from a creative development perspective. But you're seeing other southern cities that have just exploded, like Nashville. You're seeing Birmingham really, really take off. You're seeing Memphis take off. New Orleans has already had its amazing history, and it continues to thrive. And you've got Jackson that's in the middle of all these places. And it's a great place to start a business and create something.
Very nice. That's how we feel about Toledo as well. I mean, when you think of Ohio, you have Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland. You have just three big metropolitan areas. And then you have Toledo up in like the Northwest just by itself. It's often overlooked. But I think, speaking from Toledo's perspective, there is going to be a pretty big revolution in terms of industry growth here pretty soon in both food and beverage, and then also, others like software manufacturing and stuff like that.
That's great. Yeah, we've seen over the last couple of years really talented chefs that, were working in great places in New York City or in other, more, cooler, bigger food towns that, but they were from Jackson, and they knew early on, like, I'm going to go off, I'm going to get my experience, I'm going to come back and do something for my hometown. There's a lot of loyalty to Jackson. The city as a whole has not the best reputation, but for those of us that are from here and that really love it and believe in it, I think, again, I just think it's more better and better.
And speaking a little bit about the Jackson community, if you guys aren't at your bar, where would your favorite hometown restaurant or bar be?
I think part of it is just, the community feel. So in the Fondren area, we've had so many, neat other places pop up. I mean, Walker's Drive-In, right around the corner, you have a James Beard nominated chef, and it's a 1946 diner. So same year. So ironically, opened the same year we did. And now, the current owners and chef have really taken it to the next level over the last 10 to 15 years. So obviously we like to support the area and the local establishments there, but then partly, wherever we have friends that are working, at other bars or restaurants too. I think a lot of that is just supporting them and wherever either their new ventures may be or, wherever we know somebody that's currently bartending and want to go pull up, talk to them, try something out they may have.
Yeah, I'd say definitely one of my favorite places is a spot called Elvie's, not Elvis, Elvie's. And it's a good friend of ours, Hunter Evans, and named after his grandmother, Elvie, who grew up in New Orleans. And it's in a kind of a neighboring neighborhood to Fondren called Belhaven. And it's just a fantastic New Orleans-inspired all-day cafe. And their cocktails are great, their wine selection's great, their food's great, and the owners are just some of the nicest people you ever met.
So you guys have mentioned New Orleans a few times. Do you guys travel there often?
Yes. Not not as often as I would like to. Yeah, it's always been kind of a second home for me. I have family there. My wife and I almost moved there prior to opening Apothecary. But yeah, it's only about 2.5 hours, depending on traffic. And so, you can get down there so quickly, and it's just, it's definitely my happy place. And now I've got 3 kids. I mean, all 3 of my kids have already been trained that New Orleans is the greatest city in the world. So strong, yes.
Yeah. And the thing about New Orleans is, I mean, you can, as many times you go down there a year, you can never eat at the same place twice or drink at the same place. I mean, there's so many, one weekend you can go and do something more formal, and the next weekend, you can just, wear a t-shirt and be casual, and both weekends have just amazing weekends, but just, do totally different things, or even go to different parts of the city. I mean, so like a lot of large cities, I mean, it just has so many offerings, and the pricing, it's just so reasonable. That yeah, anytime you get an excuse, and, even late on a Friday, you're like, let's go to New Orleans this weekend. So it's nice to be able to get down there.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I'm getting a text as we're talking from one of my good friends that said, hey, heading down to New Orleans Saturday with kids. Where can we go eat?
A few of our past guests have mentioned New Orleans, and they always mention these different bars. And I actually went there and went to about 30 different places, and I haven't came across any of the ones that they've said yet. So I'm like, you think going to like 30 different places you eventually would, but there's just so many places to eat and drink there. It's hard to, like you guys said, go to the same one twice.
So many.
But the food was great. The Cafe du Monde was awesome. It's a great experience. They got the museums down there. You can go on the tours of the swamps, cemeteries, and there's just so much history behind the city as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to feature me on a different podcast talking about New Orleans, I can give you 2 hours.
That's funny.
I mean, I personally have never been to New Orleans, but everything I'm hearing seems like we got to go pretty soon.
Yep.
Since taking over at the Apothecary and Brents Drugs, what marketing efforts have you put forth, and how has social media played a role in that?
You know what? We really have not done any marketing. First of all, people thought we were crazy that we were going to open a bar without a sign in the back of the restaurant and nobody would come. And thankfully our banker believed in us. But we really, other than, Instagram and, mostly Instagram, but Facebook and Twitter, but that's it. And it was all word of mouth. And thankfully, from the beginning, the first 6 months that we were open, people would wait 2 hours to get in. So yeah, we really haven't done anything. We've actually talked about putting sort of a vintage sign outside that just says bar, and it's only on when the bar is open. So that might be something we do, but I don't know. We've made it 7 years without a sign, so I guess that's good.
Yeah, if you put a sign out front, the waiting line would be 3 or 4 hours.
I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm sure. So no, you're good, Joey.
So what % capacity are you guys at right now?
So we've been at 25, and we just last week went to 50% capacity. So in some ways it's been unique. I think it kind of gets you back to the basics and makes you kind of think through some things. We've been operating a lot of times with one bartender who's been bartender, server, all of the above, or at least when we were at 25%. And, it's so much more of an intimate feel, I guess, for the guests that you do have. It is certainly nothing anyone, desires. I don't think it's where you necessarily want to be operating at 25% capacity, but I think you can make it what it is. And I think at least the 25% that's in there, all have a, great experience. So I think in some ways it's certainly been a challenge, and I'm hoping it's in the rearview mirror sooner than later, but we are up to 50 and, now operating with staff of 2 on, weekend nights and busier nights. But it is what it is. We had a small capacity to begin with. So it's certainly been a challenge, but I think like anything, we've just been glad be able to keep the doors open and keep a business operating, at least the last few months.
Right on. And you guys come from backgrounds that are not within the food and beverage industry. When you first started out, what would you say was the biggest learning curve?
It's a great question, and I've been thinking about it. You're right. Neither one of us came from a ownership of food and beverage program. I started working in restaurants when I was 15, so I'm familiar with. I've kind of done a lot of it. I think knowing that and kind of being in the restaurant, working in the restaurant business prior to being in ownership, we knew it was not going to be easy. We knew that it was going to be challenging, and like we mentioned, I mean, both of us have careers outside of the cocktail bar, but we knew that we couldn't just open the door and let it go. And so, the first year that we were open, we were at our day job, leaving straight from there, going to the bar and being at the bar till sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning. And it was exhausting. But it was important, and it was important to get to know people and make sure that the place won't burn down. And so that was challenging, but that's going to be the challenge of opening any business in general. But as you guys know, I mean, the hospitality business is really hard, and there's a lot of darkness and a lot of stuff that happens, and you have to take those things head on. But we've gotten through it.
Absolutely. And one of our favorite sayings around here is, there's what there's what you know that you don't know, and then there's the complete unknown that you just kind of fall into, right, as you take things in stride. So, in our day-to-day working in software, we try to limit the unknown as much as possible. And that being said, was there anybody that helped you along the way, like a mentor or anybody that was able to point you in the direction that you needed to be in?
Yeah. So from the beginning, we formed a partnership with the owners of Cure in New Orleans, Neil and Kirk, and they were just incredible mentors to us, not only in helping us build our beverage program and train our initial opening staff, but just always being willing to take a phone call or a text or, hey, how do we handle this? What do we do with this? Because they had their bar open for a couple of years post Katrina and really took a risk themselves when they opened Cure. And this past year they were the James Beard Best Bar Program Award in the South. So just fantastic guys, and we could not have done it without them.
So you guys mentioned New Orleans. Besides New Orleans, if you were to go to visit one place and recommend it to somebody, where would it be?
That's a good question and a broad question. From a food and beverage perspective, from a bar perspective, or just in general, where would you want to go?
Either from food and beverage or just in general, a place you'd love to vacation to.
Wow. That is a tough one. I mean, obviously Nashville in the South is obviously, you had just so much growth recently. There's a lot of, so many places to try up there, both from a, restaurant and bar perspective, with new places coming online and then places that have been there a while. So that's one that comes to mind.
For me, I love going new places, but I really love Colorado. Spent some time there. I've been there before. My wife was born there, but went out there for my 40th birthday and spent time in Denver. Denver has just exploded and has incredible food and beverage. But then we, rented a car and got off the grid. Literally had no cell phone service and stayed in a little tiny house. But got all the great wine and food and all the things that I needed in Denver. But just to get outside of the city, I would tell anybody to repeat the trip that we took. It was fantastic.
Yeah, Colorado's been pretty hot lately. You mentioned that it's growing rapidly, but also been able to just go and enjoy the outdoors. And it's one of those places that really has a variety of things to offer for, pretty much anybody, right? From what we've heard. And you're also not the first person to mention Colorado as a great vacation destination. So that's just got to be another testament to how great it is.
Well, it's nice that you can go and enjoy, city life. I mean, Death and Co. has one of their bars is there the hotel we stayed in they had Death and Co. downstairs, which was really great. But then being able to drive 2 hours west and be in the middle of nowhere, having both of that, it's hard to beat.
Have you guys had a chance to visit Lee Spirits?
Have not.
Yeah, so the shout out, that's another podcast we had actually just wrapped up in September. And they were really great. They sent us some samples. And if you like gin, I mean, you got to check it out. Their products are really good.
And going off of what Frankie said, they have this spicy gin. It's like 92 proof, and it's extremely smooth. They use it for Bloody Marys. And we tried some actually, and it was phenomenal. And I'm not a huge gin guy myself.
And they're out of Colorado, right?
Yes,
yep.
Yes, south of Denver, right?
Colorado Springs.
Yep. Right, yeah. Yeah, I'd love to try their products. It's not in Mississippi at this point.
What would you say is your favorite drink?
It really depends on the day.
Good answer.
I have such a hard time answering that question, or what is my favorite food? I guess I could say I have my go-tos. I really, really love a Vesper martini. I think martinis to a lot of people have gotten a bad rap over the years because they were really made poorly for a while. But if you go back to the classic, again, going back to the classic recipes, it's really hard to beat. And the more I've gotten into cocktail culture, the more I can just really appreciate, 3 ingredient cocktails and keeping it simple and not getting too crazy. So, a Negroni and martini, I could be happy with those two the rest of my life.
And Brad?
So I'm actually a beer guy. So I like to, if I'm just on my own somewhere, I like to drink a good, local beer. So it is one of those interesting things that, when we've done a cocktail bar, part of that is that we still also want to include. So we have, a number of beers and always keep some local beer around. But I love some, like Belgian Abbey Ale type things. If I'm just in my happy place, just me at the end of the day, and that's my kind of go-to or what I really like.
Nice.
So going off talking about drinks a little bit, do you guys have a hangover recipe? And if so, what is it?
Okay, so one of the things, and we really didn't get too much into this, but part of the, inspiration, and when we said, okay, we have to do this bar in the back, was that we hit on some history. And so I was doing some, research on the history of Brents drugs, just as a, old pharmacy, and what did soda fountains look like in the 1940s and pre-Prohibition Mississippi, because we knew so Mississippi was not only the last to come out of Prohibition, Mississippi was the first state to go into Prohibition. So you had the longest dry spell in the state of Mississippi, obviously, than anywhere. Mississippi voluntarily went into Prohibition before we had, federal Prohibition. And so just in looking at some of those things and really reading about the history of soda fountains, we came across some articles and even a book that's been written that talks about that during Prohibition, what happened was you had bartenders that overnight lost their jobs. So basically, think of this entire industry when you shut down, alcohol sales in this country, or at least legally. Bartenders who in the open made a living and made good money and were kind of the local, bartender, socialite that served drinks, all of a sudden had nowhere to go. And most of the time they had an expansive knowledge of, of just mixing cocktails and drink and other things. And so long story short, they have nowhere to go. So the best ones, or some of the best, moved to Europe. So the United States, unfortunately, lost some of our best bartenders temporarily. But then some of the other ones that obviously had, roots that they want to stay put, started working in soda fountains. And so the reasoning was it's, kind of the next best thing is, hey, we're mixing alcoholic beverages. Well, if we can do that and we have a flair for flavor there, then we could do that with non-alcoholic drinks as well. So part of the soda fountain boom that you had in the United States, partly was due to the fact that you had bartenders moving behind the soda fountain and start making these unique soda fountain treats that we're all familiar with now, but just came about because you had bartenders drop back there and start making these unique drinks. Well, what ends up happening, 10 years later, you come out of Prohibition and your bartenders go back to tending bar again. And what do? They take all these things like, dairy drinks and flavored drinks and take those into the spirits world. And so part of the reason that you end up with, some of these drinks, in the cocktail realm are because we had bartenders that spent time behind a soda fountain. So that is a long way to say you asked for a hangover cure. Well, in reading some of this history, one of the things that was a hangover cure from the soda fountain days was something called an ammonia Coke. And it's different than ammonia. It's not like the household ammonia that you'd use, but it's something called spirits of ammonia, and you can order it online or whatnot. And basically you just take a few drops of the spirits of ammonia, drop in a Coke, and just like if you were to go smell some ammonia and it would kind of wake you up, same thing, except you drink it. And, anybody can get online, order some spirits of ammonia if you want to, aromatic spirits of ammonia, is what they're called. Drop, 10, 15 drops in a draft Coca-Cola and drink it, and it definitely wakes you up and makes you feel good. It has a unique flavor, but it's something that's tried and tested from the late 1800s, and we've done it a few times. Had some friends ask for something after New Year's Eve, and I said, try that, and they said, yeah, it's definitely unique and very authentic. So.
That's pretty legendary. Have never heard that one before, and definitely got to try it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you've heard that.
It's almost like my phone's listening to me. I went and searched spirits, and it said spirits of ammonia on the first thing.
Do it.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Add the cart?
Yep.
All right, perfect. No, that's actually a pretty cool history lesson, though, that bartenders went to soda fountains and then they were able to come back and bring new tools and, expand their arsenal, really.
And it's one of those things, I think you don't think of it this way, but just from even a physical, aesthetic, if you want to say it that way, when you walk into a soda fountain or your traditional soda fountain, you basically had what we use the term bar stools. I mean, you called them bar stools, and people sat at a soda fountain. So when Brents opened in 1946, hey, there have been bar stools at Brents, for 70 plus years. We just hadn't had bar stools at a true bar for the last 7. But even the setup of having stools in front of a service bar, were around. So when we designed the cocktail lounge, in Apothecary, we have some bar stools that we actually found that were called soda fountain stools. I mean, they're kind of inspired by that. And then the lights we have in there are inspired by pharmacists, and there were lighting that we found that have this, really authentic look, but it was actually what pharmacists used. They could kind of move the spotlight when they counted pills. So it was really a fun project too. I think one of the things that we really enjoyed about this is, coming up with things that would have been there, and taking actual, drawers, pharmacy cabinet drawers that we had that have been in this building for 70 years and kind of repurposing those as like our hostess stand and our server stand. So it really has been a neat project from a design perspective, and just kind of as we would think through, okay, what is this going to look like? And we would say, hey, what can we use that's already here? Or what a pharmacy, or, what would have a speakeasy in those first 20 years Brents was open? We'd heard about a few speakeasies in Jackson. What would they maybe have looked like? And so it was neat that we actually had the old shelves where it was floor to ceiling shelves, were these tongue and groove pine boards. And when we took down the shelves, because, to make room in the space out in the drugstore room, we actually took those shelves and used those as the walls. So the walls are, you have an original cinder block that was in that building. And then one of the walls is the old, shelves that have been there for 70 years. So it was, again, a neat project to use stuff already in the building.
Yeah, that's cool. Very resourceful and pretty crafty on your end.
Well, and one thing about the design process was we weren't in a major hurry to get this thing open. Like we were determined to do our research and do it right. And so, I mean, we spent a couple of years putting together these ideas, and, started conversations early on with Neil Bodenheimer and Kirk Stoppinall of New Orleans and tell them about the project. And then when they came up, they were like, guys, this place is amazing. Like, you're sitting on something. So that was really fun. I mean, research and development is always fun. But we were determined to be as authentic as we could and to really honor the space and all the things that were in it.
Yeah. And to that end, I'll just add, I think one of the things that it made it a better product by not having to be in a rush and kind of do things. We found this amazing pharmacy cabinet that's, the backdrop of our bar. And it was from a pharmacy in Massachusetts that we found and were able to get shipped down here. But it's something that could have been in a pharmacy in Mississippi, but it's beautiful. And, we didn't find that piece and say, hey, let's build a bar around it. We were working on the bar and just trying to figure out what things look like and came across that. And as soon as we saw it, we said, that's it, and there's just, so again, the fact that we didn't have to rush, that we already had a space up front, and then we said, let's do the bar right, however long that takes. Don't get me wrong, we would love to, have revenue earlier, but we did want to make sure we got it right when we opened. It was a 2-year process. We were lucky we, had that freedom to do that, but I think it allowed us to put out a better product, when it was complete and when we opened the doors.
That's awesome. And it sounds like you guys really did do it right. So you mentioned it took 2 years. Was that from purchase to open?
Yeah, I guess here's the best way to put it. So Brents was operating, the drugstore soda fountain up front the entire time. We just kind of had this storeroom that was locked away that most of the people in the community didn't even know existed. As I mentioned, I think earlier, it didn't have air conditioning or heat. One of the challenges was we went to the landlord and we kind of said, okay, so you're going to put in air conditioning and heating for us, right? And he said, no, you took this space as it is. And so we luckily were able to work something out and got some free rent, in trading out, those type of things. But because we had this almost hidden space, we could kind of build it out without interfering up front. But, I think it was roughly 2 years when we started on architectural renderings and, starting to order things and just figure out what equipment we needed. And, we changed things. The entire concept, we initially were going to have a rear entrance to Apothecary. So it would be a separate entrance than Brents. And, that was one of the challenges we came into. We had so it was initially, this is a drug storeroom. So you can imagine you have almost like a loading dock in the back with steps going up it. And it's very authentic, rustic, rusty handrail, that kind of thing. But it was not ADA compliant. And we had some other issues there that, even just a few months before we opened, we made the final call to say, you know what, we're just going to have you enter through Brents. And kind of flipped it around. The bar was in the same area, but our entrance now became, through Brents. And I think we would agree that was probably one of the best things we did. But partly that was just that we had a little bit of time. We weren't in any real rush. Once we did have to start, paying the contractor and borrow the money from the bank, we had to get going sooner than later. But, again, as the process went, we just kind of figured out details, and each one of them kind of built that, if we do this, that's going to work out well.
Right on. And would you say that most of the traffic that goes through the front, they stop in the soda fountain and then they also hit the bar in the back? Do people usually get the 2 for 1?
And if you can bring in your family on a Friday night and you can be eating dinner in Brents and having shakes and burgers or that grilled pimento cheese and bacon that you want, and you can get up and walk back to the Apothecary and get yourself a cocktail. So they work well together.
Nice. What would you say is the most important thing that you've learned since opening the Apothecary and along your journey?
Caring and taking care of your staff. Take your time, hire really good people, invest in them, and treat them, with the utmost respect. I mentioned before, but we've really had some great people work for us, and they care, and that's really important, because if they really, really care, then your guests are going to have a great time. And not that it's anything new, but we always tell our employees that you're hosting a party like you would be hosting a party at your house. So treat everybody that comes in like they're your house guests, and make sure they have a great time.
And that's something we've seen from a lot of bar owners. They always say staffing is like the most important thing you can do. And going off of that, have you guys had any of the same people that you started with still working for you now?
Unfortunately, no. We've been fortunate that I would say 95% of the people that have left didn't leave to go work at another bar. They were working on other careers, or they were moving, or they got married, or we had a bar manager that was fantastic, but he just really wanted to get into beer, and started brewing with the local brewery, and now he's moving to New York and opening his own brew pub. We'd love to see that. We're entrepreneurs. We love to see our employees go off and do something as well. So no, we don't. We just one of our bartenders, she just finished up her counseling degree, her marriage and family counseling degree, and she's been with us for like over 4 years, which is amazing. I think she's gonna move on to her counseling career now, which we're sad about, but it's been great to have her.
People move on throughout the stages in their life, but at least, like you touched on it, they're not going to another bar, they're not going to another restaurant. And I mean, I think you guys probably really help propel people throughout their career.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a number of our employees, or if they did go to another bar or restaurant, it's been, a good thing. It's always been really important to us to have good rapport and relationships with our neighboring restaurants and bars. We're all in this together, and we have some friends that are basically across the street. They have a great restaurant bar called Dumbo's, and they have a great cocktail program, and they have great food, but they're not open late. And so, they'll send people over to us, or we'll send people over, their way. It's, Brad and I both really believe in that, and, not taking the, I don't really care who you are, I'm going to poach all your people approach.
Very cool. Yeah. That also just adds to the Jackson camaraderie between all of the bars and food establishments there. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Seems like you guys are pretty well traveled and have been to a lot of different places. What would you say is the most thrill-seeking thing you've ever done?
Oh, goodness. I guess I did run with the Bulls in Pamplona years ago. Definitely, and I think you have to add, if you've never been to Festival San Fermin, nobody tells you that you stay up drinking all night long and you run at about 8 a.m. So I think it was the fact that I ran after a night of drinking some great Spanish wine and beer, and then I think we laid on the sidewalk or in the little park for maybe 20, 30 minutes, and then got up and ran with the Bulls. So I think that's going to have to top it. Anything that I can think of.
Did you jump off of a helicopter once too?
Yeah, I did a little skydiving one time, but now I just slow down and do things like open bars. Those are
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's pretty thrill-seeking in itself.
I'm kidding. It's certainly a lot more risky and challenges than everything else, but it's certainly fun, and certainly look back on it. You tend to remember the good things, so that's one of the fun things.
How dangerous is it actually to run with the Bulls?
Luckily I was in a little better shape then, but they're right there behind you. They give you a rolled up newspaper, or you can pick one up, and they act like that's gonna, be able to knock a bull off if he's right behind you. But it's a wow factor. I think it's getting more and more touristy every year, as I understand it. But if you want to rush, that's something definitely fun to do, because again, you don't know, or at least I didn't know anything about it until I showed up and didn't realize, oh yeah, we're just going to stay up and party, and there's no hotel rooms, so you maybe go lay down in the park. But other than that, you're just going to go run with the bull first thing in the morning, and I didn't even know what time the bulls were going to run when we showed up. So
that is a very interesting one.
Yeah, I like
it.
That's one of the crazier ones we've heard for sure. And Jonathan, do you have any thrill-seeking memories?
I mean, how do you top that? I'm starting to think my life is really boring. I really can't think of anything. Like, I'm not okay. Full disclosure, I'm not really a thrill seeker. So I mean, I'm really good at sitting on a porch, drinking a bourbon, having a good conversation. Is that exciting?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Me and you would get along pretty well. I'm not much of a thrill seeker either.
Yeah, we were scheduling a whitewater rafting trip with the boys. Frankie's like, "That sounds so fun, guys. I'll be at home."
Yep. None of us have gone whitewater rafting before, and they're all like, "Let's do a category 5." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good on that. I'm just gonna stay home, please."
I have done that. That's pretty fun.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, that's pretty thrill seeking then. I mean, that's more adventurous than I would get.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, I guess we're winding down the show now. Are there any last thoughts you guys have, or any advice that you'd like to give to anybody?
I was going to tell one story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One thing that back to that, one place you'd recommend. Brad and I were kind of talking about it's really easy to say oh man, I love this place in New Orleans or Nashville or Chicago, but thousands of people already know that place, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to tell a story back to the New Orleans thing. There was a Saturday. New Orleans has great dive bars, just really great dive bars. And there was a Saturday that my wife and I were in town in New Orleans with some good friends of ours, and it was the day that they were having the Women's March, and we were eating brunch at this great place called Paladar 511, and my wife and her friend realized hey, the Women's March is about to start. We're going to go do it. We were like, great. It's the middle of the day. It's on a Saturday. Y'all go do the march. We're going to go find a dive bar. And not knowing exactly the area that we're in, but our server said, oh, you got to go day drink over here at the Friendly Bar. And classic New Orleans corner bar. And we walked in and, just a beautiful dive bar. And we realized quickly, as we're sitting there having a Miller High Life at noon and a shot of Buffalo Trace, that people were bringing in food like crock pots, and they were setting up several tables and just filling it up with this potluck lunch. And so we asked our bartender, what's going on? And I mean, obviously we weren't from around there. And he was so kind and just said, one of our regulars passed away, and we're just having a sort of a dedication service for all of us here. And he was like, and y'all are invited. And it was just this quick, aha moment of this is what a bar is about, right? It's about community, and it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from. If you're here, you're here. And it was just, unfortunately, we couldn't stay for the potluck. We had to move along, but it was just one of those experiences that I won't forget. And I think that really is just one little story that is what makes bars so special.
It's amazing the cities that you can go to, and it's they make you feel like you're at home, even when you're 10, 50, or even 1,000 miles away. It makes you feel like you're at home still.
Definitely.
That is a really great, wholesome story, and probably one of the best I've heard in a while. Yeah, I think that's probably the goal with most authentic bar owners, is that they want everybody that's there to feel like they are part of something greater than that, whether it's, you know, the family that they've built or the community. Yeah, that's a really great story.
Yeah, there was I don't know if you're watching, I've been watching the show Yellowstone. Are y'all familiar with that?
I've heard of it. I've never actually watched it, but I'm like familiar with what it's about.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
It's great. There was I actually plugged this into my phone because I thought it was so great, but there's a line, and it really goes back to the hospitality business, and it had nothing to do with the hospitality business. It was about family. But the dad, who's Kevin Costner, says, it doesn't matter how many people sit at the table. It matters that they have a place to sit. And I just thought, like, that's it. Like, that's the beauty of hospitality, is you're providing the place for somebody and to serve them and to make sure that they have a great time.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like what you were telling your server. You know, you were like, you know, pretend like this is your house and these are your guests, right? I mean, nobody wants to feel like they're not included, right? I mean, everybody wants to feel like they're part of it.
That's right.
Well, are there any questions that you guys have for us?
Thanks for doing this. It's been really, I really want to go back and listen to all of your podcasts and just kind of learn the stories that you guys have been unfolding, you know, across different bars. How long have you guys been doing it?
November will be 1 year complete.
Yep. So we started, back in November. We didn't start releasing for a little bit after that. The past few months, we've been doing a lot of remote podcasts. We try to get about 2 to 3 scheduled per week, and then we release 1 per week. So we have a pretty decent backlog built up as well.
Okay, well, here's a question for you. So, you know, when COVID's behind us, after you've been doing all these interviews, what's the place you're most forward looking to visit? Either, you know, destination, the city, or a particular establishment?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's always a fun one. Well, you know, Joey and I and Dan, we've been kicking it around, and we said, well, you know, in 2021, I mean, I think we're all going to be at a place financially where we're going to have a chance to go and tour most of America and some of Canada and really, you know, visit all of these great places that we've either, you know, interviewed people that work there or the New Orleans. Yeah, we really want to see it all, if we're being honest.
Yeah, but if we were to pick a few specific ones, Floribama is definitely one we're looking forward to a lot. Well, there's so many. Spotty Books and Ale, Spotty Dog Books and Ale in Hudson, New York. Looking forward to that one.
I started listening to your podcast on that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's hard to choose just one, but if we possibly could, it'd probably be Floribama, because they're pretty. They have a lot of different restaurants. They have a bunch of different like unique aspects as well, and yeah, that should be a good time.
See, that's probably Joey's, but for me personally, I would go up to Toronto, Montreal, because we've done 3 in Canada, and I would really like to go to Canada again. I've been there a couple times, so I'm looking forward to that. And then I really do want to come down to Mississippi, and and in Atlanta. There's just places that I've never been to personally. Like I said, I'm not much of a thrill seeker. I don't travel much, but some of these places just make me want to feel like I'm at home somewhere else.
And kind of going off what Frankie said too, now that I think about it, some of the ones we have done in Canada, was it Bar Chef, yeah. Bar Chef, Cold Room. Yeah, those are both very interesting and unique bars. And I've actually never been to Canada past Niagara Falls, so I would really like to visit those as well.
No, that's exciting. I will have to share on Floribama. So when Jonathan was telling his story about the Friendly Bar, it reminded me of we're in the area down in Florida, not too far from Floribama, on Christmas Day one time. And I think it was about 10 a.m. Down there with family. And so, you know, my father says, hey, let's ride on down to the Floribama. He's like, they're open on Christmas Day, and, you know, a lot of bars aren't. So we get down there and, you know, did a little driving, get down to Floribama, and they had same thing. It was just a potluck on Christmas Day. And I mean, you don't think about it, but there are a number of, you know, drivers, truck drivers, and people are traveling for work or just in the area or may not have family, and they just provide a potluck. And it was just anybody and everybody in the area, bring food, whatever you want, eat as much food as you want, and grab drinks. And so Floribama is definitely kind of one of those, I don't know if many people would describe it as their third place, but it certainly provides an opportunity for, you know, all, you know, aspects of people and society show up, get a drink, and appreciate the place.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't really answer your question as specifically as you probably wanted. Just I literally want to go everywhere and meet everybody that we've talked to, so it is difficult to choose.
I think we're all itching to travel at this point. Just hopefully putting some money in the bank account, hoping things continue to business continue to do okay, so that when things do open up in the coming months, we'll all have things to look forward to.
Agreed. I'm looking forward to going to either Boston or Denver here in the next 2 months. So that'll be exciting. If there's any places you guys recommend in either of those two spots, if you've been.
I'll tell you real quick about Boston. Is one of my favorite places in the whole country. Is a restaurant there called Sportello. And speaking of diners, it's set up kind of like an old diner, but it's an Italian restaurant. And their homemade pasta, their bolognese is the best I've ever had anywhere. But then as you finish your meal, they have a cocktail bar downstairs that's just excellent too, and they'll walk you through the kitchen that they have, and you go downstairs and they have no menu. You stand or sit in front of the bartender, and they just say, "What do you want? What are you in the mood for?" Just kind of like the whole menu is built off of a dealer's choice. So I would definitely check out Sportello and their bar, which is called Drink.
Definitely.
Yep,
yeah.
I'll definitely make sure to hit that one.
That sounds great. Well, look, if you ever end up down this way near Floribama, New Orleans, anything like that, if you're not too far from Jackson, come on up. We'll take care of your drinks and get you a burger.
Of course.
Oh, yeah. I got to try the food and drink. Everything just sounded so good.
Yeah, but our cross-country tour is kind of, right now it's scheduled for probably around like April next year. We're hoping stuff's at least lined up pretty good by then, and we'll have, a few weeks to go and do that. So plan on about April next year.
Yep.
That's great, guys. Well, it's been really good talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking time to come and sit down and talk with us today. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
We've enjoyed it.
Yeah, awesome. And then anything you'd like to plug? Website, socials?
Yeah, you can check out our website, which is just apothecaryjackson.com. And then you can find us on Instagram as well.
All right, After Hours Nation, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to stay updated, you can check out our site at afterhourscast.com. Don't forget to tune in next Tuesday morning for our next episode. After Hours Nation, stay thirsty, my friends.